You're the on the floor now, Mr. Mike.
Okay,
You are spotlighted, sir.
I'm Michael Boyd. I'm a physicist, engineer, and archaeologist too. And I've since, I don't know, started in 1998 when I was working at this company that made disk drive test equipment. And I fabricated these took a hard disk platinum and I made 3 of them where I put little square nano bumps and nanopits on a surface of a hard disk along a radius. I did that with a thing called a focused ion beam, which is a fancy electron microscope. And then when I was doing this to make for an optical tester thing that looked for defects on the disks in the manufacturing process, and I took this disk and I put it on this thing called a certifier, which measures the magnetic properties of the hard disk ladder, and discovered what's called gravitomagnetism or nanogravity. And I discovered that there's 2 kinds of nanogravity. There's a pull type of gravity, and it's produced by the presence of mass moving, the little nanobumps. And then there's anti-gravity that's produced by the absence of matter, or little nanopits, as they moved under the sensor. So what it is essentially the same thing as a semiconductor diode, but for gravity. And
Really?
Didn't discover it. I discovered it, and I wrote a paper back in 1999. It was published in the International Society for Optical Engineering, and I wrote a paper on it. And then in 2012, I was reading this paper by this guy, Hal Puthoff. I don't know if you know him. And Hal Puthoff was talking about space-time metric engineering. And simplified, what it has to do with is as you get closer to a massive object, say you decide to spend a little time on the surface of the sun, well, time goes really slow there compared to here on Earth. And but although the time goes slow,
so the bigger the mass, the slower the time. So that's why like things like insects are like so quick and fast, but have such short.
So, but the opposite is true for space, empty space. You see, we focused all along on the mass part, but we forgot the empty part. Okay, and so basically, as you go into space, time goes faster. Right, but length gets longer as you go towards mass. Time gets longer, but the length gets shorter. Okay, and that's basically what Puthoff's paper was about. And the other things that happen is you go to this what I call expanded space-time. You get blue shifted as you go towards the denser or the more massive space-time. Well, everything gets red shifted. So now with that in mind, if you think about the whole universe is supposedly expanding, and how do they figure that out? Well, it's based on what they call redshift. Okay, well, what if that's gravitational? What if they're wrong and the whole thing isn't expanding? What if it's all forever? Is what I'm saying.
I think you said, Michael, about the.
But the point is this. I took this, and then just last July, I submitted a paper to the the IEEE Sensors Journal, and they just approved. They just last Friday approved. They accepted my paper. Okay, and basically what I'm doing is I'm solving string theory, because the problem with string theories is 11-dimensional. So that means you got to have 11-dimensional tensors. I can't do that math, can you? So my solution is I made little nanobumps that are less than the Planck mass. Follow? So I'm measuring, and I'm measuring it at 100 nanometers away. Okay, so I'm all within the so-called Planck domain.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, and that's where I found this nanogravity. And
It's on the gravity's on that nano scale. That's
so now I'm
fascinating aspect.
The reason I'm going to preface what I'm working on, though, is I have a test here. This thing, it's called a differential time meter. And what it is it has the timer here, and then the sensor, and then a 100-foot cable. Okay, and so what you're able to do is say you take the meter upstairs, and then you take the sensor downstairs. You should see a time differential. Follow?
Right.
You're
Yep.
getting closer to the Earth, so the gravitational field should be stronger. And then vice versa. If I turn it around this way, it'll be the opposite effect. So I should be able to measure whether the gravitational field is stronger or weaker. And so my reason for doing that is I live in Santa Cruz County, and we have this gravitational anomaly called the mystery spot, where they already know there's a gravitational anomaly there. So what I want to do is map it out. See if we can. So basically,
is that one of the spots where like the cars literally roll up the hill?
Well, the ball rolls uphill is what it looks like. But what it is there's a whole book on these that show they're all over planet Earth, these gravitational anomalies. The point is that another way. So what this does is it has crystal oscillators. Okay. Now the other way you can do it is with the tuning fork. So the frequency of the tuning fork changes as you go into increased gravitational field or decreased gravitational field. You follow? So it's a physical phenomena that it's reality. It exists. It's just that we've taken it for granted. And if there is free energy, that's where the free energy is, in gravity. So now, for example, one of my little nanobumps, a nanobump that's a 20 micron square and 32 nanometers tall, produced 32 milliwatts of power. Now, if you scaled that up to like 1 meter squared, it's like 40 megawatts. So
right,
now the problem is scaling it up, of course. And when you're talking, I don't believe it's free, because you got to spin the disc, right?
For sure, but like you're showing and proving that there's a fundamental difference between what they're trying to project gravity as and what it actually is, and that in reality it's existing on this nano physical geometry scale in the Coulomb area, just gravity, like everything else.
Well, I think what's going on,
that's what quantum is. It means it's real tiny.
So what you're saying that the gravitomagnetism creates a energy potential that is actually the gravity, nano gravity. That's very similar to what I'm saying. It's, in fact, what I'm gonna tell in my little presentation. But we're very close together.
Bill, that's why I think everything happens for a reason. I don't believe in coincidence. Okay, There are no outliers. I'm an experimental physicist. There are no outliers. Everything happens for a reason. And you talking to me about 10 days ago, that happened for a reason. You know?
Yeah,
And
we're
so
like we understand each other, like we known each other for a long time.
yeah, well, maybe we did. We're in the same time stream.
It's similar.
So that's basically my spiel, I guess, guys.
So now Nathan is going to have to take the nanogravity aspect onto the gravel flyer, and maybe, you know, that might
Well,
be
actually, the gravel flyer does use the nano. In fact, that what is it? The center disc. I noticed that it has some kind of weird film on it. It's got nano features on it, doesn't it? And it has something to do with the frequency of there's ultrasonic source involved in it too, correct?
Yeah, we're using harmonics and also the octave of it. And we're trying to hit right around the 5th octave in it. When you hit it, it amplifies all the power in it.
So gravity, most people think gravity and electromagnetism are the same thing. They're not at all. Gravity can be slower and faster than the speed of light. The speed of light is the same everywhere, no matter what the frame of reference, okay? That's because photons are timeless and spaceless. They don't experience time or space, okay? They're virtual is the way I like to describe it. But gravity is an inertial energy. So it's time dependent. That's why when you talk about frame dragging in general relativity, it's because gravity is time dependent. Electromagnetism isn't, okay? And then anti-gravity, which is produced by the absence of matter moving, is time dependent in the same time frame as gravity is. So there's basically two space-time continuums, one for gravitation and one for electromagnetism. Okay, and that's what. So like it's kind of like in the magnet, when in the electromagnet, when you're switching polarity from the magnetic field from one to the other, you create what's called hysteresis. Okay, where it's kind of like an S-shaped pattern in current versus voltage, and there's a delay. There's a time difference between the two. That's the closest thing I could find
You're talking
in
about
electromagnetism and what's going on with gravitation. So
there's a delay, right, between the amps and the magnetic field.
Right. So, and what I
can't
actually
remember which is ahead of the magnetic.
Mike, you're staticky here.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can't understand it.
It's cool.
Staticky? Still?
Not now. We're saying something and we couldn't understand you.
Is it the current that lags the magnetic field or the magnetic field that lags the current?
It's the magnetic field that lags the current.
It's behind the current, right?
Yeah.
Right, that makes sense because the current
reluctance. It's reluctant.
You're supposed to resistance in the material is generating the magnetic field through the pushback of some kind.
So inertial energies, though, just totally different. Now, the other thing that was interesting, so in a hard drive, you have these little magnetic domains, or they're bits that you have a little electromagnet, makes these little nano bits on it of positive and negative magnetic field directions. And then the little magnetoresistor sensor reads back those bits, and that's your digital data that you get off your disk, okay, your disk drive. Now, some of them are rather large because they have your data, what's called a data zone where your data is, and then they have these other zones called a servo zone, which is like a big off-on pattern, and that's for alignment, essentially. It's an alignment pattern in a certain zone of the disk that references your data. Okay, and that's basically, but a nano bump or a nano pit will wiggle the little sensor arm. Okay, but those data bits, electromagnetic data bits, don't wiggle it. Okay, so there's no physical force being imposed by the electromagnetic field.
And those nano bumps are created by the photon.
But the bump or the pit will actually produce, the pit will produce a push force that I could measure with a little piezoelectric sensor on the head, it's called, the head arm. And then with the GMR or the MR sensor, I could measure, quantify how strong the force was using magnetic force measurement. You follow?
I just had an idea, Mr. Boyd, and everything that you are talking about and working on with the nano packet gravity, have you applied it to the Viktor Grebenikov nano structuring, I guess, materials and experimenting?
So are you talking about metamaterials,
like the bug wings?
Oh,
and
the bug wing. Yeah, I looked at the bug wing thing.
But it's
a nano cavity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's on the surface of the wings. Okay, that's creating a cavitation effect. Which, yeah, that's exactly what the nano pits do. Okay, is they produce a push force. So, and as I was saying with the gravifier, on the disc in the middle, the surface of the disc in the middle, there should be there. What I'm suggesting is there's some sort of metamaterial structure, and if you don't have it, this book here.
Ooh, I need that book. Or you got to return for a Metamaterial Monday episode with that book.
It's a pricey book. It's like a couple $100. I bought it used for like $89 before anyone knew about it, right? But
so you're gonna slowly scan pages and come back every fourth Monday for Metamaterial Monday episode. And
the point is, you can look at this now when you're talking about doing what is it, ultrasonics and high frequency electromagnetism. What this does is you can engineer the surface you need to achieve the harmonics you're seeking, is I guess what I'm trying to suggest.
Yeah, that's why he uses the upper plates textured, and so is the lower one.
Right.
Basically, he's creating the beetle shell part, and instead of getting a resonance chamber with the beetle shell, he's getting an open resonance, and we're losing energy because of it.
Right. Right.
And we should, it amplifies, but it's not as good as it could be. If we just had a shell around it, then it would be a lot better, because it's like an open air magnetron. So if we close it in, we can pull in the energy better.
Right, but what this does is the problem is your source is uncollimated. It's the best way for me to put it. It's not. It's kind of like too noisy for you to. If you could create this meta surfaces, I think you could achieve the harmonics you need to get the thing to live.
So you're saying I just need a clearer tone.
And don't connect to ground either, like your supply.
No, this is. So everything in the universe is moving with respect to everything else. When they talk about rest mass, there is no such thing as a rest mass. Okay? Nothing's at rest.
Yeah, it doesn't connect to ground. The Tesla coil connects to the ground.
I think you should try to run everything without connecting to ground.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
No,
Well,
you don't pick up the energy. There's
to
an
put
energy
your
doubling
source,
going on.
your
and you
source
don't get
has
it.
to be grounded, or else you're not going to have a source. Okay.
Well, you can send, one Tesla coil to another one to lower potential, move it that way.
So, but I'm just making suggestions. From
I get
my personal experience is that there's everything he did it. I mean, you can see his videos and you can see that he did it, that it's the real deal, but it's got to be falsifiable, it's got to be reproducible, or else
He's probably not disclosing everything. Maybe he soaked the discs in some type of acid to create the little holes.
No, honestly, by working with it, it's how you tune it. If
exactly.
you can't do it right, you won't hit it. It'll look like it does nothing. That's why I tell you about the energy, because when you pick it up, it doubles. So when you got your high voltage coming in and you got your Tesla coil energy, you'll get a little sparking on the brushes, right? If you back off the high voltage almost all the way and you turn up your Tesla coil, now when the energy hits, it's going to over amplify. So it'll go and hit everything. So if you have any metal that shouldn't be there, it's going to spark right over to it. It'll look like you turned your high voltage to double.
That might explain why people's cars go out when they see craft go overhead or whatever, these craft.
Yeah,
their power goes out.
The center plate is cold, but the outside is blazing hot. So there's something, there's another effect going on there. Yeah, it's but you can measure 74 degrees.
Endothermic in the center and then extremely hot on the outside.
Yeah, it's hitting all the outsides. As soon as you hit that special state, there you go. It's burning. It'll burn your finger immediately. But you put the meter on at 74 degrees. So you're kind of at a loss, like I'm burning my hands here and I don't get it. So there has to be something else going on. It's taking that resonance, creating energy.
Do you see an indication of heat, or you just feel it? Because you could just be feeling weird electricity and thinking it's heat.
No, I burned my finger right on it and showed it right to the camera.
It burned your finger, actually burned your finger. Okay.
Yeah. It'll put a degree burn right on your finger. No problem whatsoever, quickly. And then, like I said, it's cold. So you're looking at it on your little meter and you're going, well, why is this thermostat thing, why is it showing that 74 degrees and my finger's burning?
It is weird.
So it's an anomaly, but you have to hit special states in it. You have to be able to harmonically tune this. Like I say, it has to be like a singer in the right tune, right? And you have to keep tapping the center plate until you get that right tune. And then once you do, immediately the energy picks up. I mean, like immediately, it just starts going higher.
How do you control the ultrasonic frequency?
Basically, I turn it on and I wait for to hear it popping. It'll make clicks. As soon as it's in the right resonance frequency where the energy's going to amplify, you'll start hearing it making clicks. And as soon as it does that, you're going to start to hear your Tesla coil back up with energy, because now it's forcing it back into the Tesla coil, not just out of the Tesla coil, because it's down the throat of it. It's not connected directly. So it'll have a crossover and it'll start to really build up power in your Tesla coil. That's why the ground's important, so that it can shoot it back in. As soon as you need it to flip
use a battery or something else.
So there are tunable ultrasonic transducers that you can buy.
I didn't know that.
So I suggest you Google it.
Do some homework.
Because that's what you really want to do, is you want to have one that's tunable, and then you want to be able to hook it up to your spectrum analyzer.
Yeah, I use barium titanate in my system, and it's fully tunable.
So that's what you need to look for, because basically you got to look at, because that's what you said it. It's how you tune the thing, right?
Yeah.
Assuming you get every component assembled correctly and the correct geometry and everything. You have the correct power, and you got all that from the inventor. It comes down to tuning, and so there's. But my understanding is
it is an instrument.
Gravity is actually a phonon. It's a type of phonon. Okay, and I learned about this back in the 90s when I was making semiconductors, where they had these lattice defects that move. The little crystal, they'd move in the crystal, okay, and they're phonons. Phonons travel through the crystal lattice. If they do that, why should they be able to do that in other mediums?
That would explain the heat.
What's a phonon exactly?
Phonon.
The sound
I mean, it's not a photon.
So that's
though,
like
right?
it's like the
It's like a
photon that is light, but it's a sound
is
one. It's a sound version of
photon
a
is a
photon.
timeless, massless, lengthless quasi-particle. A phonon is a massless, time-dependent quasi-particle. It's time-dependent.
So one's light particle, the other's a time particle.
It's an anti-gravity, what they call anti-de Sitter space. Okay.
Isn't a particle have mass though?
Well, it does. It's got positive mass, not negative mass. Does it weigh more? It weighs
how is
less.
it massless then? How is it massless? You said it was
it
massless.
doesn't come from mass. It comes from emptiness.
Its energy has
Some
mass.
people call it the quantum vacuum or the 0 point. They got all kinds of different names for what they call it, but it's not the Casimir effect if you need metal plates, okay, to produce the Casimir force. You don't need metal plates. This gravitomagnetism field, I measured it on little glass nanobumps. They made glass substrates for hard disk patents, but they didn't put any metal on it. And I put one of those on the spin stands, and I could measure the gravitomagnetism signals coming off glass nanobumps. Okay, so it's not. They call
it's just the dimensions and that's it.
Would it be similar to, say, quantum tunneling?
Quantum tunneling is an example of gravitational interaction faster than the speed of light.
There you go.
Okay, and you get quantum tunneling. An example of quantum tunneling in nature is coronal mass ejection on the sun. So what happens is before you have a solar flare. If the solar flare heads towards Earth, it's an electromagnetic pulse. It hits the Earth, takes approximately 7 minutes to reach the Earth at the speed of light. The coronal mass ejection, a bunch of the corona is thrown off into space in a big wave, like in the ocean, millions of miles wide, and it takes 3 days to get here. Well, the thing they discovered is that a day and a half before the flare, the radioactive decay rate in certain radioisotopes on the dark side of the Earth changes. It slows down. Okay.
Yeah, it gets weaker.
And so what happened? What's going on is there's a pre-signal from the anti-gravity pre-signal from the sun. It's one of these.
I guess it would be kind of similar to, say, like a tsunami wave. Before a tsunami hits shore, the water by the shore actually recedes back out to sea.
Exactly. So there's a pre-signal, okay, that comes before it, and I found this same effect with my little nanopins. There was a gravitational signal before the electromagnetic pulse produced by
that pre-signal is not an outward signal; it's an inward. It's going the other way, away from Earth. It's pulling. That's why it's pulling. It's pulling on time. It's pulling on time. It's dragging down time. Pulling time down.
No, it's
The coronal mass ejection is going outwards, but this thing is happening before the outward thing.
yeah, no, this is happening before the electromagnetic pulse from the flare.
Right, so it could be an inward effect happening before the outward effect. Is what I'm saying.
Or is it's like a charge?
Well, the point is, the question was, is it a tunneling?
It's pulling from the backside of the sun.
That's what tunneling is. Okay.
Before it explodes.
And I learned about quantum tunneling in the late 80s. We made these. So basically, when in a semiconductor junction, you have 3 different charge exchange mechanisms. Like silicon diodes use what's called diffusion limited, which means that all the semiconductor materials involved in the charge exchange. Okay, and then there's this, as you cool it down, you get what's called generation recombination, where the junction has a little like bubble where there's like a positive charge region and a negative charge region, and that's called generation recombination exchange. And then as you get really cold, like below 50 degrees Kelvin, you get what's called tunneling mechanism. And what tunneling mechanism is essentially, the simplest diode is a piece of metal on a semiconductor. It's called a Schottky diode. And what's going on is the electrons are actually tunneling.
in no certain direction, huh?
And then so what it looks like is, when you look at the diode curve, it's usually like and then it has a forward bias and a reverse bias region. And what happens is it goes in a loop on the positive side, where it actually at one point the electrons are identically but of the opposite spin on the 2 sides, and that's when so
there's like a neutralization happening at some time.
Yeah. So it's like the space time is being shifted over a little bit into the future.
More like paused. More like it's being paused.
Right. Well, I mean, if you think
suspended
about
animation,
how does a have you ever looked at gain in a like amplifier gain? What's going on there?
Yeah, you don't go too high. You get distortion.
Right. You get saturation is what you get. So. But if you get in this, there's like a sweet spot region where you get like gain, like 100x or 200 times the gain in the signal, okay, in your amplifier.
You mean the feedback?
Right, exactly. It's you're creating a bubble is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it does get louder, the feedback. It just keeps getting louder and louder and louder. And it's like, what? I'm not turning the volume up.
And then it goes when you get the saturation. It just hisses. It just makes.
Right. So, the gain is. I guess that's a resonant effect. It's the circuit's just finding resonance and it's reaching its maximum.
It is. It's a self-resonant
capacity. Making.
It's a self-resonant effect is what it's actually going. So, and that's what you're trying to achieve with the gravifier. A self-resonant.
In that Tesla coil, exactly. Right there.
So,
exact effect I need.
But you can't, right.
Well, you got to
like trying to tune something you can't hear.
You got to be able to repeat it is the problem.
Excellent. Gerald, are you there? I don't know if he's there. Maybe we'll go to Ben.
Benefactor.
How you doing?
Maybe you want to get us up to speed on what you're doing. And yep,
I hear you.
You're just fine.
Yeah. So I've been following in the footsteps of Daniel and Erica Nunez of First Stop Energies, and when I stumbled upon their work, I was astounded and captivated and kind of obsessed trying to find out, is this real? And I spent months just trying to determine how possible this is and if they were telling the truth. And I came to the conclusion there was a 90%